The 10 types of anti-SJWs. Hey, it's Prince of Queens, and a few people have pestered me about making one of my listicle videos describing members of the oppositional party to fourth wave intersectional feminist social justice warriors. I guess because it's fair to give two sides to each cultural analysis? Some people have already tried to accurately gauge the wide spectrum of anti-SJWs, but I have held off for a very specific reason, which is that I feel like it is so fast growing of a pool that it's really hard to categorize these people accurately. But I'll attempt to give some descriptions of common types of people that I've already seen. And just for the record, when I say anti-SJW, I'm not limiting this to people who officially label themselves anti-SJW, because basically, anybody who complains about SJWs could be considered an anti-SJW, even though I personally don't like labels, but I don't mind it when people call me an anti-SJW, but I won't define myself that way as a label. So don't get hung up on semantics, that's all I'm saying. The first type of person who is an anti-SJW probably composes the largest demographic within the population, which is simply the young people who don't like anybody telling them what to do. Often they are gamers. Usually, these people are in their mid-20s or younger, and a lot of them are relatively antisocial outside of the internet and gaming circles. And of course, now they are on YouTube, as many of them got interested in anti-feminism as a result of Gamergate, and YouTube is the best place for anti-feminism and anti-SJW stuff. When they felt that they were being attacked basically as individuals for what they do in the privacy of their bedrooms, they were like, oh hell no. The motivation for these types of people is pretty simple. They don't ask almost anything from anybody because they are fine with their lives as relatively solitary people. So they absolutely loathe that people are trying to tell them what games to play, what stuff to watch, what comics to read, and how to talk to their friends online. The second type of person I've noticed who can't stand SJWs and their identity politic-driven nonsense that demands that everybody walk on eggshells to protect the feelings of the most easily offended are the people who live in rough neighborhoods and work hard just to put food on the table. Lots of these people have kids, and they're generally not really bigots, but rather they're just tough, and they don't like whiners. As a gay guy, when I meet these types of people, they often tell me that they appreciate that although I'm gay, I don't have a victim complex, and they can tell by talking to me that I'm street smart. Some of these people are, unfortunately, legitimately bigoted about certain things, but usually just to a small degree, likely due to extensive bad experiences with certain types of people. They'll try to keep it secret, at least to me, but eventually sometimes I figure out that they dislike certain groups. But isn't everybody like that? I mean, find me a feminist that doesn't at least sort of have a problem with men, and you'll win a prize. The third common person who is anti-SJW are the minorities who have just had enough of members of their own group. I might sort of fit into this category as an un-PC gay guy, and I have a feeling that this is maybe the most rapidly growing category on my list. I find more and more subscribers of mine leaving comments about how they are black or Asian or trans or gay or whatever, and they are sick to death of their own friends constantly whining about microaggressions and making them miserable. A lot of them confess to having been SJWs themselves at some point of time, but they just got fed up with it. The fourth person who is anti-SJW is the ex-Muslim. My friend Based Mama is sort of an example of this, though she was not raised as a Muslim, but you should still check out her channel because she makes videos about her time as a practicing Muslim. I think the ex-Muslim objection to SJWs is fairly obvious. People are immersed in one of the most bigoted religions imaginable in terms of their disdain for gays, Jews, and women, so when they come out of being a Muslim, they are trying to be open-minded and non-bigoted. And then all of a sudden, there's SJWs basically telling these ex-Muslims that they are bigots because they oppose Islam, when usually the SJW knows almost nothing about Islam themselves and are just trying to sound PC because SJWs are supposed to defend Islam. It's the rules, I guess, and it must be infuriating to ex-Muslims who actually know about the religion. The fifth type of anti-SJW is the MRA, the men's rights advocate or the men's rights activist. Again, this is a category that I somewhat fall into because I definitely try to raise awareness for the almost unanimously ignored gender-specific issues of men and boys. But I don't like to wear the label as a badge because there are people who become very ideological about men's rights and suffer from a lot of groupthink peer pressuring tactics, so I opt out of it as a forward label about myself. Still, I majorly prefer MRAs to feminists by a long shot because feminists are almost entirely just normies who are going along with the same narrative that we are fed our entire lives about women being disadvantaged in society unanimously, even supposedly to this day in the West when women and girls are clearly very privileged in many instances. Feminism is easy, and it's what the establishment generally wants to hear from you. MRAs, as opposed to feminists, generally can tell you exactly when they had a moment of realization that men and boys are literally being systematically dicked around by the courts, by social services, and by tyrannical feminists who have power in universities, government, media, and so many social circles. Feminists have all the power right now, but they're losing it. Men's rights advocates often had something personal happen to each one, which was their starting point that motivated them to turn into the men's rights advocate they are today. But they'll usually be able to list out all of the reasons that they are MRAs for seriously hours, and some of them get kind of a manic rage when they get into it. But usually, they mostly make good points if you have the patience, so I encourage more people to hear them out. The sixth type of anti-SJW is the liberal that has been around the block a few times and just sees that this whole culture is heading in a very bad direction. I'd say I'm definitely one of these types, as would probably be Dave Rubin, Sargon of Akkad, and Mundane Matt. We theoretically want the left to do well, maybe sometimes driven emotionally more by nostalgia than super tangible reasons, but also because we look at the right and we just can never bring ourselves to feel like we actually fit in there, for whatever individual reasons. The seventh type of anti-SJW is the alt-right true believer. These are rare. Contrary to popular belief peddled by leftist media propaganda that basically claims that all anti-SJWs are quote-unquote alt-right, there are very few people who actually subscribe to the more official alt-right ideology and self-identify firmly as alt-right. I would say only about 5% or less of the people that have been branded by leftist media as alt-right actually give a shit about people like Richard Spencer and take super seriously things like white genocide and whatever. Some of these people are major bookworms, history buffs, and statisticians, or stuff like that. They get very into their own head and do all this research to back up what is probably usually confirmation bias. The YouTuber Black Pigeon Speaks comes to mind in terms of somebody that these types of legitimate alt-right people probably enjoy the videos from. The eighth type of anti-SJW is the Libertarian ideologue. I would say most anti-SJW type people actually identify in some way or another as partially libertarian, albeit commonly just as a cultural libertarian, which I say about myself. Still, there are definite full-blown libertarian true believers who take it very seriously. They worship Ron Paul. They call people statists as an insult because they basically believe all government is flawed and anybody who believes in any sort of state is a square. And they always have an explanation to explain how pulling oneself up by one's bootstraps in every scenario you can imagine is always the best thing for civilization and each individual. I would say that guy T gets a bit like this sometimes, and I enjoy him, usually, but I think most of these people take things a bit too far, which is why I call them ideologues. The ninth anti-SJW is the fence sitter, somebody who flip-flops back and forth being a bit of a SJW, but also totally can see why these people are a problem. I think I have a few of them as subscribers. My mother is a bit like this, and I have several friends that I stay loosely in contact with on Facebook who are like this. They can watch an entire 7-minute long Milo Yiannopoulos clip and agree with everything he is saying, but then you'll talk to them next week and they'll be trying to tell you about some awesome feminists they just heard on the radio a few days ago and how they are talking about intersectionality and how cool it is, and you're like, what? I thought you just watched that Milo video and you were laughing. What the hell? I think with these people, they just tend to be rather removed from things like social media, where most of the SJW arguing really takes place. So they only understand in theory how bad it really is, but not at all how the culprits who instigate the drama, the subsequent lies, and the majority of the abuse are almost unanimously the SJWs themselves. The 10th type of anti-SJW is one I come across fairly commonly in the comment section of my channel and even the occasional person who reaches out to me over Facebook, which is the closet case anti-SJW. I think these are people who live in liberal urban areas or who go to college, and they realize that they are surrounded by a bunch of brainwashed lunatics and they don't really know what to do, so they spend their time watching YouTube videos. But most of their friends don't even really realize that they are looking at channels like mine. I'm guessing that eventually these people will be brave enough to tell their SJW friends their true feelings, or even dare to simply disagree with a baseless assertion about somebody being smeared by Mike.com or something. And then all of a sudden, a friend they've known for years will flip out on them and block them on Facebook. That can only happen so many times before this person stops being a closet case. And it can't happen soon enough. Drop me a comment and stay tuned.